Okay, this is part one of Murder Suspense, where we have a strange situation where there is one crime, a murder, and yet we have four different people confessing to the crime, and we also have four different witnesses who are collaborating, or rather, corroborating the statement by at least one of these accused. Now, we start off with a telegram, or rather, urgent message being sent to our detective. We will name him later, we will give him an introduction later. But this is obviously inspired by Sherlock Holmes, apart from anybody else. And of course, there are other people like Bomkesh Bakshi, and we have our own Feluda in a way. So now our private investigator receives a message, an urgent request by one of the investigating officers that there has been a crime, and the problem is not really to catch the culprit, but to determine who the actual culprit is. So, having been going through a lean phase lately, with not much cases in hand, he decides to make the short train journey to the requested destination, which is basically just outside Calcutta. It's in Kalyani. And some of you may know Kalyani being famous for Kalyani beers, and Kalyani is also very famous for its dairy products. And he arrives in the first train, and he takes a rickshaw to the address that he has been given, and he sees a lot of people still lingering around a big house, and there is a there is a there is a police van. There is already he can make out there's still a lot of activity going on. So he enters the premises, and he is greeted by the Inspector Rawat, at the gate itself, and he is immediately offered a cup of tea, which is much needed in the cold winter morning. And the sun is yet not out, and you can there is slight sunlight. There is slight light in the sky, but the sun is definitely not out. So they sit down, and while they are still getting acquainted with the case, the award cup of tea arrives, and our investigator is offered a cigarette by the police officer, the investigating officer, but he declines, and he takes out a beedi from his pocket, and with a smile he lights it up, and then he sips on his cup of tea. That's when the investigator, Officer Raut, discloses to him the the situation at hand, and he explains that they are currently in the house of the deceased, and the crime has not been committed here. However, they are here to trying to piece together the events which led to his eventual demise, and they're trying to trace his way backward. And so, being the impatient kid-like feature that our hero has, he immediately asks the investigating officer to brief him, to get to the point. That's when the investigating officer says that this crime was committed somewhere last night around between 7 to 9 o'clock, between the 2 hour window. However, the each of the accused are giving a specific time frame, and they are stating that they each committed the crime exactly at the same time. And the victim was hit on his head, and there were prima facie, looking at the corpse, he could ascertain that there has been two blows. One which was from the front, and there was a second blow hit at the back of the head, possibly after the victim had already fallen on the ground. And the second blow, most likely, pending the coroner's report, is most likely is what killed him. And each of these victims have their shoe prints somewhere leading up to the crime scene, and yet the exact crime scene, which we will get to later, is very hard concrete, and there is very little to go by in terms of any obvious evidence. But then they have all, from their quarter, they have footsteps leading to the spot and going backward, which is on softer ground, and they have been already, we have already taken prints of those footprints. And so the situation is that as we were, we discovered this body, and which was told to us. We were informed by a phone call, followed by another phone call, followed by another phone call, and a fourth phone call. And all these four people were reporting the crime, and each of them said that they clearly saw who committed the crime. And they each named four different suspects. And once we knocked on the door of these suspects, they calmly accepted that they did it. In fact, so much so they each had the apparent murder weapon sitting on the one of them had it on the kitchen table, one of them had it by the door, and one of them was actually still holding it. And the fourth one, I wasn't there. I think he also had it. And the funny thing is, each one of them actually had the blood on it. We are yet to ascertain whether the blood was of the victims or it was just some other blood. So that's where we are. We had just had one crime. We have four eyewitnesses who are saying four different people killed this person individually, not together, and all the four people we have approached have accepted, and they have also said why they did it. So that's where I have called you urgently, because this can become a joke very quickly. Murders are not something which is unknown, especially for Kalyani. But then this seems like a very, very funny case. And that's when our hero interjects and says, not funny. There is definitely more than what meets the eye. That's when our investigator, Mr. Rawat, says that that is the understatement of the morning. So they proceed to the scene of the crime, which is not very far from where they are currently. They walk through a narrow passage between two buildings, and this is basically a colony which is built by residents, and not all of them work around here. Some of them are retirees, people who have had government jobs, and they have now decided to invest in this colony, and they are settled. And finally, when they arrived at the scene, and it's basically probably someone was planning to build a basketball court or something of that sort, and it has not been completely completed, and it is surrounded by four buildings, a building on each side. So basically, it's covered by four buildings, and there is a passage to go through from the thing. At night, that's when Officer Raut first came to the spot. He noticed that this place was rather well lit, and it was not impossible for someone to see a crime happening from the windows of their houses. And so then Mr. Rawat went on explaining that how and who reported what, and now that's where we will pick up the next part of the story, and let me know what you think. And by the way, just so you know, I'm going along making the story as I record. So I haven't written this, I haven't thought this through. I basically have a plot in mind, and but the some of the names, and one of the reasons I'm not really named our private detective, because I have not really created a persona for him. I don't want him to be like Sherlock Holmes, but I want him to be quirky. I want him to. We will probably discuss this in the third installment of this videos, and by then I will hopefully get an interactive session with them if someone is willing to interact, and see if this how we can shape our hero. So it will be all of our hero, and we will see what kind of qualities, what kind of attributes we can give him. So that's it. Good night and stay safe. Keep maintain social distancing, and think about this crime. And yeah, bye.